Ask for approval of the previous minutes, the minutes of January. I may have a motion approved. Motion by Ellen Schulte, second. Henry. All in favor? Aye. These are approved. Now we'll open the public hearing on the Redfield Parkway pillars. Who would like to start us off here?
I will. Kathy Ellen, 2 Redfield Parkway. Let's see. The stone pillars are a unique landmark within our city, a part of our architectural heritage, and we're obligated to preserve that heritage. Too much of it has been lost already to decay and demolition. In 2011, the Genesee Finger Lakes Regional Planning Council named the Redfield Parkway District as a culturally significant site. They stated, the Parkway is an historic and aesthetic vista to the Veterans Hospital, and its location on Main Street is a gateway for the city of Batavia. The pillars are a contributing feature of the street. The pillars at the entrance of Redfield have stood for over 100 years, a testament to quality craftsmanship. There has been little maintenance and very little money spent on their upkeep. They are a reflection of the character of old Batavia, of which so much has disappeared, and we as residents and citizens are obligated to take care of them and preserve them. When Dunkin' Donuts was recently built across from Redfield, they took the extra step of installing a stone facade on the lower portion of the building to complement the pillars. And the owner specifically told me that. Our local paper offered an editorial in favor of preserving Batavia's landmark pillars. The proper steps towards preserving the stone pillars for another century is to give them the deserved declaration of a local historic landmark. Thank you.
Anyone else like to make? Yes?
Make a few comments here.
Could I just do one more thing?
Sure.
2 more minutes, okay. Unfortunately, I've been working on sump pumps and I wasn't paying attention to the pillars. And I didn't get a neighborhood email out in a very timely manner, but I did get a couple of responses. And I'll just read those 2 responses. From Pam Russell, 29 Redfield Parkway. When I first moved to Batavia, I remember going past Redfield Parkway and seeing those pillars and saying, someday I want to live on that street. Couldn't imagine those beautiful stone pillars, a piece of history, not being there. I am very fortunate to live on Redfield Parkway, and still, every time I come in or out of the street, I think, how could anyone not love those stone pillars? Hopefully, I pray they will support the designation of those pillars as a historical landmark. Get them fixed. The pillars will stand for more than another 100 years. I love living in Batavia, and I'm sure the Historic Preservation Commission will get it done. From Jim and Brenda Pierce, 15 Redfield Parkway. I have attached a picture of the Redfield Parkway pillars as they stood in 1912, near the time they were constructed. The subdivision became a part of what was then the village of Batavia. I believe the fact that the subdivision became a part of the city with the pillars already in existence speaks to the fact that the city should and would want to take responsibility for the upkeep of this important part of our history. Over the years, the city has lost more and more items of historical significance. Some were lost to fire, some to urban renewal, and some to neglect. We would hate to see the Redfield Parkway pillars, an important part of Batavia's history, also lost to neglect. We think it is appropriate that the pillars be designated as a local historic landmark, and that the city takes the proper pride in maintaining such a landmark. Please relate our feelings or read this statement to the appropriate parties should we not be available to attend the meeting regarding the pillars ourselves. We will be out of town for the next few weeks. That's it. Thank you.
Kathy, can I get copies of them sometime?
Sure. Can I just mail them to you? Okay, we'll do.
Thank you.
Actually, you can have these. I have it on the computer still, so.
Perfect, thank you.
Well, thank you for allowing us to speak to you. My name is Jim Owen, Redfield Parkway, and I'm not going to add too much, but the fact is that today I learned a little history, which is great to know. One of the questions was, who owns the pillars? Well, back in 1928, the city of Batavia decided to, with the residents of Redfield, that the city would take over the street. At one time, it was sort of a private street, and then as needed for water, paving, and so forth, the city and the residents agreed to become part of the city. I always said in one statement we should have joined the town, but obviously it's a great city to belong to. Now, in 1912 is when the pillars were erected. I happened to be there that day, and of course Garnett and Williams was the land developer. And what I learned today from this gentleman, it makes sense. When the city took over the pillars and the street as part of the city, Garnett and Williams would have the right to go in and to repair the pillars. And that makes sense now to me. But my argument is the city now has the right to go in and repair the pillars because they are the owner. Even though it might be on two private properties, I still say the city has not the ownership, we could argue, but the right to repair. And of course, we appreciate that you might be putting this on the local register of history. Is that correct? I'm not sure the correct term on that. But I'd like to show you a picture, as mentioned by the Pierce family, 1912 when I was here, and then one about 1940s, about what Redfield Parkway looked like. I'll pass that around for you. You may keep that. And also the statement and how we ended up with the pillars from a very prominent lady. My parents bought it from a very prominent lady in town. Her name was Edna. And of course, she signed the property over to us, and this is how it all started. So that comes back. But it was to our parents, and as a result of that, the pillars, that one pillar became part of our property, even though I still believe the city owned it. It's on our property, but the city has the right to repair it. So we'd like to preserve that and to keep the pillars in Batavia. But I hope we appreciate what you're doing. I know sometimes it's tedious. I understand there's been somebody coming out maybe to examine it, to give the city council a price of what it costs to preserve the pillars. If you look at them today, from a distance, they look great, but they're 106 years old. We like to keep them around for another 106 at least. We appreciate your help, and thank you very much for your time. Have a great day.
My name is Don Freiling. I live at 6 Redfield Parkway, next door to the Owens. I don't have as much to say, but I wanted to speak in favor of those pillars because I feel that the street pillars are an iconic piece of Batavia's history. Too many pieces of old Batavia have been torn down over the years. Most recently, the old park shelters were torn down, Kibbe and MacArthur Park. And we know what a huge mistake it was when they destroyed Main Street years ago. So those pillars are seen by thousands of people coming into Batavia every day, coming in from the west. People coming down to the VA hospital. Again, it's an iconic piece of Batavia, and I feel that it should be considered a historic landmark. Thank you.
Will either of you two ladies?
Sure, I think we just came here to find out what.
You're here for the church, right?
Yes, we're.
Oh, okay.
It's a First Baptist church.
I guess we can close the public hearing. Thank you. Looking at the historic preservation provisions here and designation of the landmarks or historic districts. Can designate an individual property as a landmark, and then it lists criteria, but a group of properties. And I think that's where we're in the situation, because the city owns part of it, and 2 parts of the pillars are on private property, so we may have to designate it as a historical district, just to be on the safe side of, you know, but we've been looking at this, you know, for how long now, Jim? We've been looking at, the commission's been looking at this for
Yeah, quite a few years.
quite a few years, oh yes. And we're finally getting to the point where we're gonna be able to do something about it.
We appreciate it.
I understand, looking at the criteria, technically, the commission has to send out registered letters to the 2 parties involved, to you and to the Ridgies. I don't expect any problems, but one never knows. Technically, we'll have another public hearing to give Mr. Ritchie a chance to respond. We have no idea where he's at. Jen said she's heard that he is a scuba diver and works underwater construction projects.
He's
So-
out of town right now, I know that for a fact.
So we'll be sending a registered letter to them, and we'll hold another public hearing technically next month to finalize, just in case that he has some objection to it. And then we will take the vote next month. The commission is all in favor of designating it as historic property. So, you know, I don't think there's going to be any problem with it unless some major objections are raised between, you know, with Mr. Ritchie.
I've spoken to him in the past, and he's in favor of whatever needs to be done. And I'll work on trying to get some response from him.
I would like to just clarify, if it's an individual property or designated as an individual, the whole property gets designated. It's not just a pillar. It's not just the landmark. It will be the property that gets designated. As a land or as a district, they can define it as outlined in the code. So it almost makes it better as a district. It can be lineated from the other properties by a description that goes to be filed with the city clerks. This portion of it is what's designated and not per se the whole property. But the first one, if you do it as an individual, then it's the property itself that gets designated. That means your whole property will be designated as a historic landmark, which your house probably fits the criteria for.
Yeah.
And the commission would love to do that,
Yes.
if you're willing.
Yes.
It's just Jim was around in 1912.
He said,
we
yeah.
named him.
That's right.
Um,
Thank you, thank you.
And then just to correct you, Paul, 3 letters would go out, each homeowner, 1 being the city.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
that's true, yeah.
Yeah,
Actually multiple, because city council should probably all receive one.
Well, yeah, that's what we did last time. We sent it to Gino, and we sent a copy to Matt.
Okay.
and we'd be happy to settle the issue of who the pillar actually, single pillars actually belong to. And I did write the city at one time and say we were in favor of giving them an easement for it.
That's a separate
Right.
issue than these guys designated. I
I'm
think it's easier
waiting
to
to see.
designate as a district as is.
I think I'm waiting to see if this happens, then we'll have, as we get each step, we've come so far in 7, 8 years now, it's taken this long. As we cross the bridges for each one of these steps and hopefully get to fruition of having the pillars restored, we'll settle that issue of.
Sure, and that's a separate issue than,
Right.
than the designation.
Yeah.
The designation tonight, we're just wanting to make sure that it is done by the letter of the code and that there's no, way that anybody can say, well, that wasn't done properly. So that'll be followed through the proper procedure,
So then
proper
in
steps.
future, if there are any objections to it being designated, we've done everything right.
Okay.
So if somebody came in and said, I'm gonna take you to court because you shouldn't have done that, or you shouldn't have done it this way, we wanna make sure everything's done appropriately.
So I don't think there's any question of designating, it's just which path to follow in the code to make
Because
sure
we-
that it's proper.
Until he realized this, actually this afternoon, we did not really think about the fact that it's 3 separate properties, and if it's more than one property, then it has to be a district.
District.
Yeah. None
And
of us had
and it's
really
not a section of the
considered
code that I go to often because it's
No,
not
because we've only got 2
enforcement.
districts, so, yeah, so we're, government runs, so,
I'm well
But we
aware
want
of
to
that.
make sure it's right.
Right.
Then it's
Yeah.
designated
Your effort.
and there's no
Absolutely.
going back.
All right, thank you.
Because we are all definitely in favor of designating these pillars, we want to see them saved. And at least this way, by designating them in the future, if anybody else has a desire to bring them down, they have to at least come to this committee and we can have a discussion about it before anything's done. It gives them that level of protection. And if we deny them taking it down, then they would have to go to city council and have a discussion. So there's a little bit of more protection for them, so somebody can't just back up and take them down.
And this is giving us a little bit more leverage to get them restored too.
With, too, interestingly enough, with designation as a national historic property offers absolutely no protection at all.
Right.
The
National
old,
registration, nothing.
Hall and Leroy, where the Walgreens is, national designation, gone.
The Masonic Temple.
Masonic Temple, so, at least with local designation, as Sharon said, there is a cumbersome process to go through to have it removed, and most people don't want to be bothered with,
Going through the process.
going through the process because it's not worth the time and effort. So we're more than happy to designate it as historic property. If nothing else, we can close the public hearing part of this, and we can move on to.
We appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for coming.
Jim, where's Edna Gruber's place of business? Do you know?
Her place of business on Jackson Street, where she owned the property, and the problem was she never lived there. People got the misconception. She just sold the property to my parents. And the question was, where were they going to have their closing? At her place of business or at the attorney's office? My mother suggested at the attorney's office, but he was the director of music. It would have been a little bit more at that time for him coming out of her place would have been a little tough.
Yeah.
Our place of business, do you know the number of it?
101.
Is it still there?
100.
100 Jackson Street, right across,
The gas station's on
right
the
across from the Salvation
Oh,
Army.
that's
other
10.
building.
I thought it was on the
Yeah,
right
one on
side.
I think
It'd be 101. 100 Jackson Street is the
100.
Red Apple. 101 is the house right behind the Red Apple.
Right, yeah.
That's her house.
That's what I understand.
That's what I was
Now, is
told.
that where Jim Gray lived?
I don't
The
know.
house that's there off the
From
lawn?
a historical point of view, the rooms are still numbered.
And you know this how?
Because.
And I do have her autograph, so.
Oh,
That's
okay.
funny. Hey, she was a very good person.
She was a very generous person.
Very generous person.
Exactly, yeah. She did a lot for the children's home and many of the children in
Yeah.
the city of Batavia. She was a very generous lady.